So is that clear that you can pick anything that falls under entertainment, anything that falls under tourism? It's it's pretty broad. That being said, you don't want to pick something that's so niche or niche that it's insanely hard to find information on. If you do that, then you might struggle with this project. So make sure that you have enough information where you can do a pretty good job of doing an analysis. So recent branding efforts, what a student in the last class when I was talking about this with the 1130 class, they mentioned, well, what do you mean by recent? And so that's a good question. So recent could be, anything within the past 30 years, I think would fall under the realm of recent. So, but again, take it upon yourselves to define what is recent. I would think of it more like 3 years, but some people might think of it as more than 5, but I think of it as more probably 3. Any questions regarding number 3? The best way to think about number 3, it's basically the goal. Basically, it's also the objective, and basically it's also the tactics. I'm not going to show you this. At least not right now. I'm going to go back to that Hunger Games because it's actually pretty good. So oftentimes when companies are doing message strategies, they utilize 3 different types. Sometimes they're intertwined. So in other words, you may have a think along with the do, or you may have a feel along with the do. So you got to think about think messages as sort of being logical. An example would be if you're thinking about entertainment, the number 1 comedy this week for, let's say, movies or TV is this show. That's a logical message, right? Saying, well, if you're looking for a comedy, logically this would be the choice for you since it's the number 1 comedy on TV or the number 1 comedy out in the movie industry, for example. Another one might be we are the number 1 let's say whale watching service in Southern California. Again, they're using logic, and so if you're trying to just use a logical choice, this makes complete sense. Another example that I don't know, maybe you are too young to remember these ads. Whenever they say, this is different from entertainment, although it is advertising. When they say 9 out of 10 dentists recommend this toothpaste for brushing your teeth, that sort of thing. So they're using logic. Any questions regarding when you think about logic messages? And again, if you watched the video from Wednesday, hopefully this makes more sense. Ooh, good question. Well, they're supposed to be, according to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, they're supposed to be accurate. But nowadays, if you send out, logical messages on social media, there's social media is kind of the Wild West. So yes, they're supposed to be accurate, but some of the quote unquote logical messages that make their way around social media is not always accurate. what did I hear? And I think this is true, that lies spread a lot faster than the truth in social media. I heard that, and again, somebody please verify if that is true, but I'm pretty sure I heard that from a pretty accurate source that lies make their way faster, circulate faster than the truths in social media. All right, so feel messages center on emotion. And the whole thought process behind the feel messages is you're trying to get people to react on an emotion. And so once you start acting on an emotion, what happens to logic? Anybody? What happens to logic when you start reacting on feel messages? Lot exactly. Emotion up, logic down. That's right. It disappears. It goes out the window. And so Nike, by the way, is really good at this. Disney is really good at this. This idea of reacting on getting you to react on something with emotions. And if you watch the video that I showed the class on Wednesday, I showed them a clip of the product placement um, of the Coke. Was kind of a hit back in the 80s, and they reintroduced it for with Stranger Things. And again, they're playing on the idea of emotion, but also in the case of relaunching an old classic like that old Pepsi. I can't remember if it was Pepsi Vanilla or whatever the heck it was. They're reacting. They're trying to utilize this memorable reaction. In the case of me, right, being an older person that remembers that, or just an old person, it's kind of nostalgic, right? I remember like, oh, I remember when I was a kid tasting that. That was cool. And even when I watch Stranger Things, I think about those days. I'm like, oh man, they're wearing 80s fashion and all those sorts of things. It reminds me of when I was a kid. So on some level, the show, but also that ad is sort of like, especially that ad, is playing on this idea of memorable reaction. So, and oftentimes, mind you, um, the really good integrated marketing campaigns utilize the idea of think. They really utilize the idea of feel, and they utilize the idea of do, right? So the idea of it, I know you guys again are probably too, well, a more modern example. Amazon does incentive programs. I don't know if anybody here is an Amazon member. I am a Amazon member. I buy lots of diapers from Amazon. And because I buy so much diapers, my God, really wish my son would learn how to use the toilet. My God. But anyways, because we buy so many diapers, we're on this incentive program where essentially because we buy so many diapers, we get essentially rewarded for it from Amazon. So, did your campaign utilize any of these do strategies? This often happens also when they have promotional, some sort of ad. Not only are they using sometimes thinking and feeling, but they also tell you, oh, the sale ends on this date, or they're only going to have limited amounts at this store. So if you think about Black Friday, I don't know how many of you wait in long lines. Now they have like a Cyber Monday, but wait in long lines to try to buy that goodie, that television or whatever, um, at whatever store. They only have a limited amount, right? You know, you have to be one of the first people in line to get that television or to get that product. Otherwise, it's gone. It's a limited amount. That's it. It's gone. And so think about how, at least traditionally, how Black Friday has been very, very effective, at least the retailers, of getting you to go out in the middle of the night in the freezing cold in some cases, just to be the front of the line so you can buy that product. No questions on the do? And sometimes, right, the do messages are sort of they're sort of mixing the idea of these two appeals, or sometimes either or, again, the emotional appeal or rational appeal. And the do messages are appealing, and really any sort of advertising is appealing. I don't know if you guys remember or heard of, well, I'm sure you've heard of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so advertisers, when they um, advertise a product, they are sending out this message because they know this product is going to fulfill some sort of need on the hierarchy. So are there any questions regarding this? This is a little bit more nuanced in terms of like, what was their visual or verbal messaging? In other words, um, were their commercials all, if they ran commercials, they all had sort of have the same tone to them? Um, did they utilize the same, logos, those sorts of things? Um, so how effective do you think these advertisements were? So think about typeface and style. So I don't know if you guys know this or not, but companies spend a whole lot of time in R&D or just trying to figure out, okay, this is the logo we want, this is the style we want, this is the layout style we want, um, this is the logo we're going to utilize, this is the package design. There's a lot of thought that goes into how things get packaged. And so think about this. They utilize some sort of jingle, some sort of slogan. They utilize some sort of spokesperson. And memories from Comm 346. Can you utilize any sort of theories in this part? So as you can see, part 3 is, there's a lot of elements to part 3 potentially. Some of these may not apply to your particular case study. These are just ideas that I am throwing out there, or things that may apply to your particular case study. It may not apply to your case study, but maybe it does. And it's just ideas. So I think, or I believe, I left off here with the Wednesday. So think of number 4 is essentially your final product. Okay, after all the tactics, after all the negotiations about, so this is the final product that was launched into the marketplace, right? So think about the product. Was it high quality or maybe not? What kind of features did it have? And features I'm referring to, this could be lots of things that can fall under features. If you think about a movie, for instance, or a television program, it could be, um, talent that falls under that, or maybe the lack of talent. Packaging, how is it packaged? In other words, it's on a retail space on the shelves, or even going back to the movies. Oftentimes, the packaging also involves, when you do it, let's say a trailer, they package it in a certain way to let you know, right, the best scenes, um, let you know who the actor, the writer, director, those sorts of things. Was there any servicing arrangements made between you and yourself, the customer, and the service provider? Warranties. Was there any warranties provided? And this applies, the warranties and servicing applies to things like, sometimes some of my groups like to do things like with video games, and they do things like, for instance, consoles. And so that's why I throw those in there for products, because students in the past have done case studies on consoles, for instance. Pricing, how much they charge. So think about if it's Disney Plus or something like that, how much they charge, what were the terms, Did they accept cash or credit? Was there any discounts? Did they utilize any sales materials, at least in the short term? Promotion is really the part that's going to be most in depth here for number 4. And this is going to be the bulk of your answer. And so for promotion, what are the best promotional options to reach your target audience? So let's just say hypothetically you're targeting, I don't know, 18 to 25-year-olds. Well, a lot of 18 to 25-year-olds no longer really watch traditional media. A lot of 18 to 25-year-olds on social media. And so and so where did they actually try to promote this to reach those 18 to 25-year-olds? So what options were used? So in other words, they did traditional media advertising, for instance. Okay, where do they run these ads? Did they run them on ABC? Did they run them on the Disney Channel? Where were these promotional where did these promotions where were they launched? Who did they reach out to? Did they do any promotion on Reddit, on Facebook, on Twitter, on whatever? So the promotions is actually what was launched or what was thrown out into the marketplace. After all the tactics and the planning was done, what was released to the public? What else was on here that I should? Also, the understanding of the limitations of the promotional options. So what were the budgets? So oftentimes, obviously, for any sort of promotion, there's always limitations according to the budget. So, we don't, even Disney has limitations on budget. They're going to tell whoever the marketing team is, okay, you can't spend more than X number of dollars, and that's it. That's all you got. And so what are the limitations of the promotional options? Did they utilize any licensing? And so what I mean by that licensing is oftentimes, if you think about a Star Wars or some of these other potential movies, Star Wars being the best example, oftentimes Star Wars, the reason that it's been able to resonate for over 40 years now is largely because of its licensing, right? Its toys and other products have enabled it to remain visible in the marketplace for over 40 years. And, George Lucas has made far more money off of his toys than he ever made off of the movies because he was very strategic in terms of how he used licensing. So, in your particular case study, was licensing used? What was made from these licensing products? And then last but not least is distribution about, so where was it available to purchase? At the store, online, at the venue, et cetera, et cetera. So any questions on number 4? Okay. So number 5. Number 5 might be the easiest. I don't know. Sometimes people think it's easy, and on the surface it looks easy, but it's really kind of can be tricky. So, so who is your target market? Who was the target market of the products that you launched out into the marketplace? So the primary target audience is the audience that's going to determine the success or failure of your campaign. Based on your research, this is a group of folks that's most likely going to buy or use your products or your service, right? And so that's sort of simple enough in some cases. So you have to go out there and see, utilize not do your own original market research. Go out and do your research to see if you can find who was the target audience of your case study. It could vary. So So you're going to be using the market research of whatever market research they did. The second part, and this is going to be more complicated, is the psychographics of the target audience. So let's just say your target audience is 18 to 25-year-olds. Okay, but you're also going to be targeting probably not every single 18 to 25-year-old, and if you are, then fantastic. But what is the psychographics of your target audience? So what is their personality? What is their makeup? So let's say, in other words, let's say you're making this up, I don't know. Your case study is on a ski resort. Let's say it's Big Bear or something like that. And so we know that not every 18 to 25-year-old skis or even snowboards. There's a certain type of person that snowboards or skis, and sometimes even skiers and snowboarders are quite different. Anyways, the point that I'm trying to make is, who are these individuals that are more apt, to drive up the mountain to go skiing, for instance? It's not every single 18 to 25-year-old. So what's the psychographics of your target audience? Who are the folks, besides their age, that's their personality makeup, that's more apt to purchase or use your service? Who are these individuals? Which is more nuanced than just saying this is my target audience. So along with this is, who is the secondary target audience? And sometimes it's not very obvious from the market research that you're going to read. So who are the other people that might be considered influencers for the target audience? So again, going back to 18 to 25-year-olds, right? Many times, not always, of course, many times these 18 to 25-year-olds are influenced by older folks, right? People they might look up to, maybe their parents, right? So these people who are a little bit older and maybe a little bit wiser, they might, the target audience, the primary target audience, might reach out to them and go, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And so the secondary target audience is sometimes overlooked, but oftentimes really important, because they might be the individuals that are going to influence the target audience to go from thinking or feeling to actually doing, right? And so who are these older folks, or who is the secondary target audience? What's their personality? What's their makeup? Questions on target market. The primary target audience part is easy. The other three parts may not be so easy. Excuse me. No questions, no questions, no questions, no question. Good. Oh, no questions. All right. So six. So six is the competitive strategies and positioning. And for the part of this is, okay, when this product was launched into the marketplace, right? What did the competitors do in response? Because most um, movies, television programs, streaming services, whatever, they have competitors, and so what did their competitors do in response? And so that's part of this. The second part of this is positioning. How did the organization position the product in the marketplace, right? Was it reinventing something, reminding you of something that was cool? Did they position it as something unique? So think about how something is positioned in the marketplace. So you could position something in the marketplace based off of, let's say, a genre, if you're targeting a specific age group, maybe you're targeting a specific ethnicity or race. And so how do you position the product in the marketplace so it stands out? A good example of this is oh shoot, what was the name of that? It was that Eugenio Derbez. Most of you probably have never heard of him. But and I'll talk about this when we talk about positioning. But he did this movie. Nobody thought it was going to do anything, but the way he was able to position it in the marketplace was he did two things. First, it was Spanish language, which already sort of makes it unique. And the second part that he did that was interesting, or that the distributor did, I should say, that was interesting, is that they released the movie during Labor Day weekend. And so Labor Day for most folks is not a big deal, right? Most of you are probably for Labor Day, you go out to the beach, you go to Vegas, you go wherever you're going to go. Generally, the movie is not one of the things that you do. But for a lot of Latinos, especially first generation Latinos, they don't go to Vegas. They don't necessarily go to the beach. In many cases, they go to the movies during that weekend. And so, because the way it was positioned, um, they were able to take advantage of the fact that studios generally, historically, don't really release many movies, at least good movies, around Labor Day or during that weekend. And so that distributor and that actor in that movie was able to take advantage of the fact that the studios didn't do that. And so for that 1 week, and really a couple of weeks afterwards, it was a huge hit. I can't remember the name of the movie. Ah, thank you, thank you. Is it ALED? Is it?
Yeah, was the instructions not included?
That's right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Exactly. Instructions not included. Thank you. And so the way the movie was positioned was just sort of genius. And I know, but I think it ended up making a little over $50 million in the United States, which again, if it's Marvel or some sort of Disney movie or just really any studio film, they'd be like 50 million is nothing. But if you're just a little tiny distributor and I think they spent $5 million to make the movie, and I'm not sure how much they spent in marketing, but certainly not that much. It's a big hit for them. So again, think about, right, how your product is positioned in the marketplace so it stands out. Yeah, it was okay. I mean, I took my mom. She liked it. It was okay. I thought it was funny. Eugenio's got some charisma. He works. He's been a huge star in Mexico, by the way, in Mexico for I don't know, sheesh, long time. Anyways, any questions on number 6? A big mistake that students sometimes make with number 6, whoever is doing number 6, is that when they don't think broadly enough when it comes to competitors. They oftentimes just think of competitors within the same category. Remember, you're in the world of entertainment or in the world of tourism, you're fighting for attention, right? And you're fighting for attention with not only your direct competitors, but all sorts of competitors. So just bear that in mind that you're competing for attention. No questions for 6? So number 7, evaluation. So in this particular part, essentially, oops, we have a question. Yes, your dad is correct. It's absolutely true. Your competitor is anybody, at least in the world of entertainment and in tourism. It's all the people. It's everybody that's competing with your attention. Everybody, your attention is valuable. So number 7, think about the implementation tactics. Determine if everything can come off on schedule. So did everything come off as schedule? So was there sort of like, say, production delays, for instance? So let's think of a movie like, for instance, Tenet, right? Tenet had this huge, I don't know if you guys are uh, watch a lot of movies, but I was really looking forward to watching Tenet because I really like Christopher Nolan. And so um, think about how that movie essentially was bamboozled by COVID, right? Even though it was released into the marketplace, didn't perform as well as I think it should have or would have if COVID hadn't hit, and maybe they should have held off on that and maybe not released it, but they did it anyways. Yeah, he's my favorite director too. And so again, think about if everything came off according to schedule. Was it in the right order? Did they have the right material in place? So, for instance, again, when I used to work in entertainment, one of our movies bombed because I don't know what the heck happened, but apparently some of our commercials that we had scheduled to run at a certain day didn't run on the day they were supposed to run. And so they ended up running on, they were supposed to run on a Thursday and they were supposed to run on a Friday. And we still had ads running on Friday, but they ended up running on Saturday. So they ended up running on Friday and Saturday instead of Thursday and Friday. And generally speaking, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but generally speaking, in at least in the world of movies, historically, Thursday is really the key day when it comes to advertising for movies, at least, because oftentimes we don't plan our weekends until Thursdays, and so that one day that we were off, at least our boss, and I think he's right in this case, threw us all off, and it messed up the potential success of the movie because our schedule was off. We didn't do things in the right order, and we didn't have the right material in place for whatever, and so we just kind of it 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 really failed, and it's too bad because the movie was pretty good. Um, so right people, right talent I still haven't seen it. I still haven't seen Tenet. I gotta watch it. Anyways, did they have the right people and talent to execute the plan? So sometimes, right, you have talent that loves to do Q&As, and they love to go out and talk to the talk show hosts, and they have the gift of gab, and they're great about marketing and promoting their products. And there's some people who aren't very good at it, right? So I don't know. Did anybody here watch the Netflix show Selena, which by the way, I still have not watched, but did anybody watch Selena, the Netflix show on Selena? Just one? Yes, I did. Two. Well, that's good. Is it okay? Besides now, my next question is: did anybody see the lead actress, the lady who played Selena? She appeared on Jimmy Kimmel, I want to say. She also did The Walking Dead. Anybody see that? If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. It's interesting. Some people loved it. Um, her appearance on Jimmy Kimmel, and some people hated it. And if you watch it, she spent the whole time playing with the Rubik's Cube as she was talking to Jimmy Kimmel the whole time. I was watching it going, oh, that's weird. That's interesting. Never looked up or hardly looked up at him and just play with the Rubik's Cube. And I'm like going, she clearly does not like to do marketing, or talk in front of an audience, or at least in front of a person. So that would be a person who probably doesn't like to or doesn't do much marketing and promoting. Then on the other hand, you have folks that are just all about it. So Did you have the right people or talent executing um, the the marketing? So think about, scheduling, which I just pointed out, budgetary issues that may have happened, timelines that may have fallen apart for whatever reason, information that may have gotten lost. Like for instance, I don't know why the our media buyers, whoever was doing our media buying or planning, missed the dates. It was very weird. One last question when it comes to evaluating: did something happen that caused an important element to drop out? So, for example, let's just say hypothetically that um, there was another actor in mind for this role, and for whatever reason, or this person just dropped out, and maybe they got fired or something happened, and you think this may have been the reason why this campaign just flopped, for instance. Did something happen, right? That's the question to think about. Maybe nothing happened, right? The last part of the evaluation, and I always think this is a really interesting point to think about, is how did the target audience judge the plan? How did the company judge the plan? Did they agree and disagree? Oftentimes, right, it's interesting. What a let's go back to Mulan. Mulan is an interesting case. Is that Disney in some ways, in many ways, I think, felt that the Mulan promotion was a success. And but I've talked to many people, and of course this is anecdotal, who thought it was a terrible campaign, and they didn't like. Not only was it a terrible campaign, they also didn't like the movie on Disney Plus. So sometimes there's a difference of opinion between what the company thinks worked or did well versus what the target audience uh, thought worked and did well. Sometimes they're in sync and sometimes they disagree. I can't remember her name, by the way. So, any questions on number 7? Now, probably no, it's not the probably, it's the last part, and it's also the hardest part to write. This is why, if whoever gets assigned number 8, this should be the only part that you do. That's it. Everybody else should do 2 parts, and one person should stick to this because this counts as twice. It's 20%. So, like for instance, editing is considered a part. So you should definitely have an editor. The editing part is really hard. Well, it can be hard. So, number 8, and again, I think it's the hardest part, is number 1, simple enough. First question: was the um, campaign effective, or again, not effective? Can you utilize any theories? This goes back to 446. We'll talk about theories as well to explain why it failed or succeeded. Maybe they didn't have a strong opinion leader, for instance, or their opinion leader was a poor one. Maybe they didn't utilize the internet, or I should say, internet fans wisely, because internet fans can be more passionate than regular folks. Um, what would your group have done differently if you guys were running this campaign, and again you have the benefit of doing this in hindsight. what would you have done differently? So, for instance, maybe you would have done less traditional advertising, maybe more social media. Maybe you've done more billboards versus traditional media, or heck, maybe you would have done more traditional media more than they actually did. So, what would you have done differently that they didn't do? And what suggestions would your group make to further enhance the what other suggestions would your campaign do? So, in other words, did your did the campaign, for instance, miss an important target audience that you would have thought would have been like a really important secondary target audience that they didn't even consider, for instance? So think about how your group arrived at this conclusion. What made you conclude this? And um, and again, what makes your suggestions, you think, or your ideas a better alternative than these folks did? So this takes a lot more thought. Um, you shouldn't procrastinate on this part. Um, and the other part to this is also the editing part, which I didn't talk about. But you do need to have an editor. I I highly advise everybody to have utilize Grammarly. I personally love Grammarly. You should all utilize it. So these are the parts to your group case study. So obviously there's lots of parts to this, and obviously would be tremendously hard for one person to do by themselves. Hence, it's a group project. And so think about your case study, what you want to do, focus on, ideas that you have, pitch them to your group, try to get everybody on board, um, and then delegate accordingly. But this one is the hardest for sure. And three would probably be the second hardest, depending on the number of tactics that they utilized and how complicated your case study is. Three would be the second hardest, I would say. Uh, no. Do I have an example of project? No, but I did bring up the fact that people have done Disney Plus and people did have done consoles. Yes, Emily, you can use those ideas if you think they've done something interesting recently, for sure. APA, yes, to cite your sources. Now, is it Devin? Did Devin ask this question? Just tapped out of this. So, Devin, I'm glad you brought this up. So yes, it should be done in APA. One thing that you're going to find when you go through my instructions, which I haven't posted yet, but I will after this lecture, is that you're not going to see anything that says, well, it has to be a certain number of peer-reviewed articles. The reason being is because this is happening in the present, and so there may not be many peer-reviewed um, articles that may help you out. So some students, when they take me in other classes and they go, no peer reviewed, what? And I go, well, this is too soon. No questions about the group project. So as you can see here, right, there's a lot of moving parts. So it's really important that you guys and ladies work together as a team and get your parts done and try to be, a good team player, try to communicate with one another, and in order to have the best project possible. If you find, you know examples of being a good teammate, maybe that's not your, particular the question that you're answering, but if you run across something good that could be useful to one of your teammates or group members, pass on that information to that group member. And then, of course, if that group member doesn't utilize it, well, that's on them, right? So that's what I mean by being a good team member. And again, I don't expect you to tackle every single question on your own. Don't do that. It's like you focus on whatever group you're assigned. That's that's what you should focus on. Um, Remember, you're only being graded on your part. If somebody else decides to be a procrastinator or to be a slacker or to be whatever, it's on them. It's not on you. So I've I've had case studies where um, everybody's gotten an A for their part, and then one person's got an F. And then I've had case studies where one person has gotten an A and everybody's gotten D's and F's. So it can go either way. So you got to pull your own weight. An individual case study. Nope, I have no samples. You got to answer the questions. A big part of at least what I believe as a capstone student is figuring things out. Ooh, good question. Yes, please use the template. Please, 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 please use the template. It's so much easier to grade if you use the template that I provided you. And Tino, sort of to answer your question regarding a template, you don't need a template because if you just answer the questions based on the um, lecture that I provided on how to tackle the case studies, it'll be fine. So hopefully everybody's seen this, right? This was your assignments for 4 p.m. So moving on to the lecture on copyrights. Unless anybody has any more questions. Ooh, more questions. It shouldn't say October. It should say for what? October for which? Hmm. I also see missing. Huh. I think that's weird that you guys can see that because you're not supposed to be able to see anything that has to do with last semester. That's so weird. Hmm. I'll check them out. Yes, if for the case studies, it's due on Thursday. Hmm. Interesting. So even though it's unpublished, you guys still see it. That's weird. That is so weird. Interesting. Okay. I will try to see if I can erase them. So any more questions regarding the case studies? Hmm. That's a good question, Willa. Uh, I, if you're gonna do something with Disney Plus, I would pick a specific program on or something specific with. That's a good question. Nobody's actually tried to do anything that when I was referencing Disney Plus. No, actually, that's not true. So if I have had a group that did Disney Plus with the launch of Disney Plus, and then I've had another group do the just focus specifically on Mulan on Disney Plus. So I guess the answer to your question is both were fine. The reason I think it worked, at least in terms of the launch for Disney Plus, it was a brand new product, and there wasn't an overwhelming amount of information out there about Disney Plus. If you're going to pick something like um, maybe like Disney Motion Pictures, I might be like, that's okay, but try to be as focused on only like the past year or two. So, um, that's a really good question. I would say you can do either one, either or, but you do want to be careful about not picking something that's going to overwhelm your group. I do think the WandaVision is interesting. I think that would be an interesting case study for one of you to tackle. So that's a good idea. The WandaVision. I've heard good things about it. I haven't seen it. Any other questions? Really? Hmm. Somebody mentioned or told me that I needed to get to the first three episodes before it made sense. So I'm like, okay. So yeah, so it's true. Okay, so she said if I got to episode four, I would get hooked, but I had to make it to the first three. So I have to sit down and check it out. So I'll definitely do that. But anyways, WandaVision, good idea. So a little bit about copyrights and we'll just talk about copyrights. So obviously it's an original work of authorship. This is sort of going back a little bit to 346, but in much more detail. So I have a question mark here, and the question mark meaning that it has to be fixed in any tangible medium of expression. So again, it has to be fixed in any tangible medium of expression. So, in order for you to have a copyright, it has to be tangible. Otherwise, it's not a copyright. Okay. So that's very, very important. And down here, what section? It's 102. So under section 102 states the work must be original and have some creativity. So in other words, could you copyright, let's just say that you, something like hello or goodbye or hi, right? The answer, generally speaking, is no. Um, no, you can't copyright them. That being said, right, you guys do know that Lionel Richie did sing a song called Hello. So the point that I'm trying to make is generally speaking, no, you can't. But if it does have some sort of creativity to it, it is very possible that you can copyright it. It's possible. But generally speaking, you're right. The answer is no. And again, it must be in tangible form. It can't be like, something that's invisible. It has to be tangible. So, a couple of questions for all of you. Let's see if you're just test your knowledge of copyrights. Can a pitch be considered a copyright? Is it protected? A pitch. So let's say you're pitching an idea in the state of California to somebody at the head of Disney or the head of Warner Brothers or Fox or whatever. Anybody else? Got a lot of no's. No, no, no. So the only person that's correct is Jacob. The answer is yes. At least in the state of California, a pitch can be protected or it's a copyright. it's sort of an implied law, right? So, in other words, when you're pitching an idea to some sort of studio executive, your idea, right? You're essentially taking something that's tangible and pitching it to somebody. Um, can be protected in the state of California under implied law. Now, that being said, right, you need to have evidence that you actually met this person and this person actually stole your idea. So does that make sense? That you have to have record that you actually spoke with this person and you pitched him or her this idea. So yes, it is implied, but if you actually want to win in court, you need to have tangible evidence that this meeting actually even occurred. Okay, so next question. Yeah, well, that might be true. Um, but does he have evidence that it was his idea? I'm not going to say it's false because ideas get stolen all the time in Hollywood. Yeah, I'm not sure about that part too. It is possible though. It's possible. I don't know. It's possible. Oops. Um, facts. Can facts be copywritten? So let's just say, like, can 9/11 be copywritten? Can I'm sure somebody's going to make a movie about COVID. Can can that be copywritten? A Titanic, can that be copywritten? The shooting of Kennedy, or the assassination of Kennedy, the assassination of Lincoln. Can any of those ideas be copywritten? Correct. All right. All of you are right. Facts cannot be copywritten. Facts belong to everybody. What about titles? Can titles be copywritten? The answer is no. They cannot be. That's right. Very good, Melissa. They're trademarked. Very, very good. So yes, they cannot be copywritten, but they can be trademarked. So you're right, Melissa. Very good. What about fictional characters? The answer is it depends. It depends on how well delineated they are. So you guys are all right. So let's just say Batman. Batman would be copywritten character that's protected under a copyright. Darth Vader would be, you know, a delineated character that would be protected under the copyright. Um, James Bond, right, would be copywritten under a delineated character. Harry Potter would be also fall under this realm. So, yes, you're all correct, but it also depends on how well delineated they are. In other words, how iconic are these characters? The more iconic they are, the easier they are to copyright. The less iconic, the more difficult it is to copyright. What about derivative works? Are they copywritten? So I think, is it Sandy? I think Sandy and Emily and Samantha are right. So derivative works, in other words, let's just say you created a movie, you're a copyright holder of a movie, and you decide to make a television show off based off of your movie, then you are the sole copyright holder of the movie, but also you're the only one that can make a derivative work. Let's say, in other words, as I spinning it off to a television show, you're the only one that can do that, unless you decide to sell your rights to somebody else. But you are the sole copyright holder. And so the last part is, remember that the author or distributor controls the first sale only, right? Does everybody understand this? Do you guys all remember? I don't know how many of you took me for 346. The first sale doctrine, that's what I'm referring to. So the first sale doctrine means that the author or distributor only control the first sale of something. So does that mean they control the reselling of that product? Right, right. Is it Kanoko? Kanoko, Samantha, Regina, you're right. So the author or distributor only control the first sale. They don't control whatever happens afterwards. So in other words, right, if a studio sells a movie to a Target or to a Walmart or to Netflix or whatever, they only control that first sale. Whatever happens afterwards, they don't control the reselling of the content. They only control the first transaction. Whatever, as long as that person bought the product legally, the author or distributor cannot control what happens with resale. Is that clear? Questions about that? So joint works. Do you need permission from both parties to, let's just say that um, two people were screenwriters, they co-wrote the script. Do you need permission from both parties, to make that into a movie or into a television program? Okay, good guesses. The answer is you actually don't. You only need permission from one party. You only need permission from one party. You don't need permission from both parties. Now, that said, um, the party that you are working with needs to share the royalties or whatever, however much money they made off of this. He or she needs to share that equally with the co-writer. Does that make sense? So you only need permission from one, but that copyright holder has to share whatever money they made off of that work. They have to share it equally with the other copyright holder. Questions? So work for hire, who pays for the rights has the rights. So in other words, right, you guys are all familiar with the fact that if you guys decide to write something, let's say you write a song or you write a movie or write a television program and you sell it, that's it. You've lost the rights to it. It's gone, right? It no longer belongs to you. It belongs to whoever you sold the rights to. Obviously, if you should remember, because I think we probably heard this from most of my colleagues, individual copyright under the Sonny Bono Act, right, is lifetime plus 70 years. For a company, it's 95 from 95 years from initial publication or 120 years from creation, whatever expires first. Sometimes I get asked this question about why the two different dates. The reason being is because oftentimes the studios or some of these big labels, whatever, will sometimes get something and they'll just put it in the vault and just keep it there for whatever reason. Just leave it there for years. And so, sometimes even people even forget about them. And so, um, you know, one of these executives might go through the vault and find it again and go, "What's this?" I'm like, "What? How come this was never made? What happened? Why did it go into turnaround or whatever?" And so that person might decide to publish it then. So hence you have these different dates because oftentimes the studios just don't always do things in a timely fashion. Quick and a question again, copyright infringement. There's two factors involved in this. What are the two factors? What are the two factors that you need to prove copyright infringement? So that person that posted but the idea about Stranger Things, I think it was Stranger Things, was his idea and it was stolen from him. If that person wanted to prove copyright infringement, what does that person need to provide as evidence that this idea was actually stolen from him or her? Okay, one, you're right, Sandy and Emily, you're right, but there has to be some similarity between, well, Sandy was more right about the idea that there has to be similarity between the original and the subsequent copy. So that's sort of proof. But what's the other part that you need as evidence? Yes, thank you, Melissa. Very good. Yes. Um, Aled? Is it Aled? Very good. So yes, number one, you need access. In other words, you have to prove that the person who stole your idea had access to your idea. This goes back to what I was saying about the pitch. So this is why it's very important to document any meetings you have. Because number one, you have to document the fact that this person did indeed have access to your idea, number one. Number two, going back to the idea of ownership or proof that you're right, that's your own idea. Second part of this is there has to be a lot of similarities between the original and the subsequent work. So, for example, I think I post this. This is a really good example of a really interesting copyright case that's still actually probably going on. So I'll let you guys watch this.
Katy Perry arrives at a Los Angeles courthouse wearing a mint green power suit. The pop star is accused of plagiarizing the underlying beat in her big hit, Dark Horse, from 2013. Katy Perry just took the stand here at the federal courthouse in Los Angeles, where she explained her process for writing her music. Gospel rapper Marcus Gray, who goes by the name Flame, is suing her for copyright infringement. Perry was all business. She made eye contact with the jurors and even offered to sing her song live when a technical glitch briefly prevented them from playing it. Listen to the beat from his song Joyful Noise. Now listen to Katy Perry's song. The case is being compared to Robin Thicke and Pharrell Williams, who were ordered to pay $5 million to the family of Marvin Gaye in a copyright infringement suit involving blurred lines. Blurred lines. Now Katy Perry is facing her own.
So you guys are entertainment students. So is this an example of copyright infringement? What do you guys think? Do you think Katy Perry stole this person's idea? Copyright infringed. Apparently that song that was played, the one that she's alleged was stolen, was a big hit on YouTube. And again, I don't know. What some of you pointed out, and it's true, it's it seems like her version is different, but I don't know. Um, this is a super tough case. And yeah, Alexis, you're well, she lost the first case. So I forgot how much she was sued for, and she lost. I don't remember the amount of money that she was sued for and she lost, but she did lose the first case. They just had an appeal that was settled late last year, I want to say, and she won. So she won. She lost the first case, and no, she lost the first case, won the second case. She won the appeal, and so well, that's a really good point, Jason. Yeah, it could have been the fault of the producer and not necessarily her fault. So it is very possible that the producer got the beats right from when he was sampling or whatever, and didn't give credit to the artist. And yeah, it's very possible. That's a good point, Jason. That's a really good point. I'm not sure if that's what happened, and maybe she didn't know this went on, and um, so it remains to be determined how this is going to all play out. Because again, she lost the first case, won the appeal, and I'm not sure if they're going to appeal again. But this is a really interesting case, nevertheless, however it goes. So, one last thing that I was going to talk to you about or talk about is the idea of fair use, because it is close to 5:30. And so you guys are all familiar with the famous court case, right? Luther Campbell versus Acroft Rose Music. Is everybody familiar with this? The idea of a parody and a parody being protected speech or protected. Yeah, that you can use satire to protect yourself. This is a really important Supreme Court case. That's right. It was the Two Live Crew. Do you know what song they were covering? Famous Roy Orbison song. Nobody remembers. No, I'm too old. Nobody remembers Roy Orbison. Yes, I'm way too old. All right, so actually, Yasin has never heard of this. So Roy Orbison sang a song called "Pretty Woman," and essentially, True Live Crew did a cover of "Pretty Woman." And this court case, kind of like the Katy Perry court case, went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so, if you're not familiar with this court case, this is a pretty good video of about the court case.
I was fighting for what we have today. It was like, this thing is really political. They really want to get rid of hip hop. People didn't get it, but I did. I had a gift of taking songs and switching them up and making what we wanted to make it. For instance, I'll give you one. Pretty Woman. I said to the guys, hey guys, you know, we got to do this Pretty Woman song. So I'm going like, oh, pretty woman. One of the guys was like, big hairy woman. So we were like going back and forth, and it became a joke. And I was like, okay, you know, look, I got to do this. I had to call my licensing people, and you know, my licensing people had to call Roy Orbison Publishing Company, which is Acuff Rose, to get a license or permission to release the version of that song. But then my lawyer said, okay, it's a parody. That's protected by the First Amendment. So you don't really necessarily need a license. You can just go ahead and do what you gotta do. And we actually did the song. But I'm gonna tell you, that thing got us in a whole lot of trouble. These people from the PMRC came, the Parents Music Resource Center. Tipper Gore was rolling with this crew of girls, and they were hardcore. They were calling everybody, trying to tear me down from limb to limb. The PMRC went and contacted Roy Orbison estate, and they said, oh, how could you let the Two Live crew do a parody of Pretty Woman? We're gonna get people to boycott Roy Orbison records. You need to stop the Two Live crew. You need to sue them. I got served the papers on a golf course. Hey, Mr. Campbell, you're being sued by Roy Orbison estate. Okay, buddy, just throw it in the golf cart. I'll give it to my lawyers. Roy Orbison publisher, go and sue us. And they won one hearing. And we win a hearing. And you know they get to appeal. And it just keeps getting bounced back and forward, back and forward. And then it gets kicked to the Supreme Court. I'm like, I'm in the Supreme Court? A rapper? Are you serious? And that was just amazing to just go in there and see these justices presiding over my case. They would sit down in the chairs and I felt like an ant. I felt like the smallest person in the room. And Acuff Rose's lawyer, they grilled him so bad, the guy was having a meltdown. Then my lawyer, Bruce Rogo, stands up there looking like old Abe Lincoln. He had been there to the Supreme Court quite a few times. But the most amazing part of it was when they said, okay, we have some briefs filed against Mr. Campbell by Michael Jackson. I was like, oh, that's my hero. Michael Jackson filed a brief against me? When they issued the ruling, I was totally numb for the whole entire day. I was like, what just happened? Are you serious? Mm-hmm. Did I just win in the Supreme Court? I went in the back room and actually started crying. It was emotional for me. If I would have lost that case, not only would it have affected hip-hop, but it also would have affected shows like Saturday Night Live, The Chappelle Show. All of them could have been sued. My case set precedent. It's the #1 case that they use right now today for parodies on the internet. You know, like intellectual property, that's parody. That's protected by the First Amendment. That was my whole thing. I was fighting for what we have today.
So that's a pretty cool video, just talking about that famous court case, which allows parody to essentially fall under fair use, and essentially it can be used. And so essentially a publisher is supposed to allow you to use their song even for a parody. So that being said, this is the last thing I want to talk about. This is the last thing I'm going to say, and then go off and enjoy the rest of your week. Is you guys remember the fact that we don't meet next week, right? We don't meet on the 15th, which is President's Day. So a compulsory mechanical license, which is section 115. Basically, the third party, right, has have the right to compel music authors to grant license to reproduce their previous published songs and sell copies in reproduction. The only thing that let's just say you're going to cover somebody's music, for instance, a publisher's music. Does anybody know what you're supposed to do so you don't get sued or in trouble, even though they're supposed to let you use it? Anybody know what you're supposed to do to avoid a lawsuit? Not that you're going to get necessarily sued, but you could get yourself in a little bit of trouble, or maybe a lot in trouble. Anybody know what you're supposed to do? You're going to cover somebody's music. Yes, Hannah, very good. You're supposed to credit them, of course. And but also before you release the music into the marketplace, you're supposed to send them a notice of intent, right? And it's called an NOI, a notice of intent, basically saying, you know, we're using your music. Yes, you're giving them credit. We intend to release your music during this date or this time. So, well, this get a license. This essentially the compulsory mechanical license is a license. So you're right, Alexis. It is a license, but the compulsory mechanical license essentially covers that. And again, they're supposed to let you use the music. It's not supposed to have any issues, except when you don't let them know. So you're supposed to let them know before you release the music into the marketplace to avoid getting yourself into trouble or having some sort of lawsuit or something go on. You have to provide the publisher with notification that you intend to release their music into the marketplace. And I believe it's supposed to be at least 30 days in advance, if I remember correctly. So, any questions regarding the compulsory mechanical license? So the publisher does have to grant the rights under the mechanical compulsory license. They're supposed to allow you to use it. You just got to notify them 30 days prior so you don't get sued. And one last thing that I'm going to mention and then go off and have a good weekend because I'll talk about this on, please watch the video. There'll be a short video on Wednesday. So how much does a music publisher get paid? Generally speaking, it's 9.1 cents for songs under 5 minutes. So 9.1 cents for songs under 5 minutes. And or 1.75 per minute, whatever is greater. So the way the publisher gets paid, right, is number of copies for every single copy that gets made, including digital. The publisher is going to get paid 9.1 cents. So publisher potentially can make a lot of money off of a cover. So when does a group case study due? It's in the syllabus. Now that being said, Tino, it is in the syllabus, but the client that is supposed to work with us may need to present on the on the day you guys are supposed to present your case studies. So if that's the case, then I may have to delay your presentations a week. Did everybody get that? That our client might meet you on the day of your case studies presentation, so we may have to delay that. I don't know yet because I'm still working with him to see what days he can actually meet with us. If it's going to be him, hopefully he can still do it. Doesn't have to drop out. Yes, please. One of the reasons why I only talk for an hour and a half is I do want you guys to go off and have your own discussions um, afterwards if you do have time. It's like please utilize time where I'm not talking, where you guys talk amongst yourselves and try to figure out what you guys want to do moving forward in terms of your group case studies. Don't forget your individual case studies, right? Not the group, individual is due on Thursday.